Hey everybody, today we're doing something a little different. We're not talking about modern Hollywood. We're not going back to the past to discuss cult classic films either, as much as I love doing that. As much as I love doing both. Today we're going to be talking about another passion of mine, which is art. And I've had the privilege of having 10 different art shows at this gallery I'm in right now. And this is my 10th, it's my biggest one. And I'm going to be showing you all of my original work, as well as these beautiful massive prints that are pretty much life-size murals that are just giant replicas of my image. So please join me as we go take a look at everything I've done. Starting at some of my originals, one of my favorite films of all time is Martin Sheen's Apocalypse Now. I love this film. It really just kind of surprised me. I remember watching this one years ago and thinking that, this film is so weird. 5 minutes in, I couldn't give it another chance. And then for whatever reason, I felt the need to watch it again. And afterwards, I couldn't stop. I've seen it probably a dozen times. I've created a mural where I'm from, and it's actually a replicant of this. I actually think the mural looks much better. It's funny the way it works, transferring an illustration into painting a mural, very different. But yeah, this is my Martin Sheen Apocalypse Now, Captain Willard, one of my favorite pieces I've done, and very happy with how that turned out. Then if we go on over here to the right, these are some of my oldest pieces I actually have, is my Breaking Bad work. I have, of course, Heisenberg, Walter White here on top, and on the bottom I have Jesse Pinkman. This is him from El Camino, if you've seen that, the film on Netflix. It's a great movie. I think it flew under a lot of people's radars, and he was just amazing in that, really broken. A lot of people, they're not entirely sure who this is because, this is a much more shattered version. This isn't the cutesy, young little punk Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad. This was a much more jaded, violent Jesse Pinkman as seen in El Camino. So I think it looks just like him from that. Then if we move on over here to the right, we also have the Emperor Palpatine. You may notice something kind of funny about it. There's some crinkles here around Palpatine's head, and as well as like some of the robe pieces. That's because underneath that is the original design. I didn't draw this because I'm into Emperor Palpatine. I wanted to make sort of a an ironic piece, kind of a propaganda piece against, Disney Lucasfilm. And right underneath that is Kathleen Kennedy herself. And I'm going to show you because I have an actual print of Kathleen Kennedy as the Emperor, so stay tuned that we're going to get to that later. That's later in the video. But this is the after effect of that because I thought, I drew Kathleen Kennedy. I might as well just draw the Emperor's face and paste it right over that, right? So there's that. Then I have a self-portrait I did quite a few years ago. I like to box in my free time. This is me at my boxing gym. Definitely a very different box office brawler at this point in time. Much weirder hair. And I always wore headbands. It looked pretty stupid. Then if we go down here, I'm actually selling some mugs of my work too. I have different stuff. I have my Breaking Bad mug. Pretty cool. And then I have the Apocalypse Now mug. Got another piece I'm about to show you, Casey from Yellowstone. So yeah, those are just a few of the different pieces I offer because I like to sell some versions of my work. And then if we move on down, these are also two more originals of The Ghoul and Lucy McLean from the Fallout TV series. I absolutely love the Fallout show. Big fan of the video games. I've been playing those since I was 16 years old. Just recently beat Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3, and I just can't wait to see what they do with Season 2. I'm a little worried because, it's Amazon we're talking about, and I don't think they have the competency to do Vegas justice, but I guess we'll see in the end. But, we're going to get into the details with these more later because I have bigger prints. But moving on over to the right, we also have Sidney Prescott from Scream. Big Scream fan. I got to meet Neve Campbell quite a few years ago, and she's a lot older now. She was always my celebrity crush, but it was a real pleasure bringing this to light. This piece didn't actually take me very long. A lot of these pieces take me a range from 20 to 45 hours to complete. These are month-long excursions getting these done. And unfortunately, lately, I haven't had the creative energy to do that. But I finished this one last Halloween on the dot. So it's almost been a whole year. And I was just really happy with how she turned out. It didn't take me that long at the end of the day. Then right below her, we have Frog Lady. I don't know where or why I decided to draw Frog Lady. You see her once in Mandalorian Season 2, and I'm happy I did it, though. It's kooky, it's weird. I haven't seen anything Frog Lady since, so I'm glad I brought this to light. And looking at this piece, one of my favorite images is of the vessel with the eggs that Baby Yoda eats. So moving down farther, we have my Nobody piece. If you have seen Nobody with Bob Odenkirk, the Better Call Saul actor, you definitely need to see this movie. It's fantastic. The intro was, I don't know, it's just a really shocking introduction scene that I just had to bring to life and make this image. And then right above that, we have Schindler's List, Liam Neeson, Oscar Schindler. That's one of my more recent pieces, and that movie just touched my heart in so many different ways, and I just fell in love with Oscar Schindler's character and the journey into compassion that he goes through in that. It's very inspiring. Then if you look on over here, Luke Grimes, I just finished him. Just like the Martin Sheen piece, I made murals of both of these. The murals are about 20 feet high and 20 feet long width, so really excited to see those come to life. I'll have to post or paste some images later, but this is the original for that. This one looks really accurate to the actual mural, so that's pretty much what's on the wall where it is. And then down the line here, we have quite a few more different originals. I'm not going to get into all of these right now. We'll talk about them more when we get bigger versions, but yep, just a few of those. This is one of my pride and joys, my Lawrence of Arabia piece. This is my second favorite film of all time, David Lean's 1962 epic. Absolutely fell in love with this. It's an incredible story. Lawrence is a great character. Peter O'Toole, he just steals the show. And I just, a lot of people think that this is like some sort of biblical image, and it kind of looks like it, but it's not. It's, a very different time, and nobody here is Christian at all. But it's, at the end of the day, my gosh, it's a must-see film, cult classic. Loved that movie. And this image took me all summer to do when I did this 2 years ago. And I think I plugged 50 hours into that one. So I was very happy with how that turned out. I also had some Lawrence of Arabia bugs down there that you just saw. Then to the right, I had a Cobra Kai phase. I think we all have a Cobra Kai phase at some point. And during lockdown, Cobra Kai was one of those big series I really enjoyed watching. And I don't know, it encouraged me to get into boxing, oddly enough, even though it's not karate or, one of those mixed martial arts. But yeah, it encouraged me to get into boxing. And then speaking of boxing, right below, we have Rocky and Apollo Creed. I also did a giant mural of that where I'm from as well. And that one looks a little different, but you know what? The idea's got to come from somewhere. So this was the host image of that. And of course, down there, I also had the Bad Batch. I love Bad Batch. It does not get enough credit. This right here, let's go back a second. This is one of my favorite drawings I've ever done, and nobody understands. I love this piece. This is Echo from Star Wars: The Clone Wars. He's sort of one of those characters nobody really thinks much about, but to me, he's always been a deep character, a true hero when it comes to Star Wars. And it's kind of hard to put into words why that is the case, but I've always had a lot of respect for this character. I've really admired him. And it's always disappointed me that he's just never gotten the attention he's deserved in terms of, Star Wars and the Clone Wars. So I was really happy I was able to make a noble image of a true leader like he was. So that's him right there. Then to the right, I was so disappointed by how badly they destroyed Tamara Morrison's Boba Fett in Book of Boba Fett. I watched all the way to the end. It had a few highlights, a lot of really cringy moments, but I had to just give him some respect at that time when I watched this. So I did, and this was the most difficult piece I've ever done. I would never do this ever again. If you look closely at the Rancor, trying to make him look organic and to make this, a convincing, realistic piece with all of these wrinkles and edges and dark spots was nearly impossible. And I'm kind of surprised looking at this and realizing that I made this, because this doesn't really fit in with a lot of what I do, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. And this was just one of those tentpole images that I've made that I'm very proud of. So very happy with how that turned out, and I think it's an awesome image. I haven't seen anything like this since then either. So sometimes you just got to make what you want to see. Then if we look over here, we'll just skim kind of quickly through these because I have a few bigger prints of them as well. We have my Jesus piece. I'll get into specifics on that when we get to the larger print. These three are my lost pets. When each year or whenever it happens, when one of my fallen pets passes away, I like to remember them in a drawing, in an illustration. So this is, unfortunately, it's never a good sign when I draw an animal, because that means it's a fallen pet, a fallen loved one. And that's what these three were: Sweet Pea, Tori, and Pooch. So I like to remember them in that fashion. All right, so then when we look over here, we're looking at Cad Bane. This is one of those characters that you really won't understand or respect if you haven't watched Star Wars: The Clone Wars, because yes, he shows up in Book of Boba Fett, which is where he's pictured here on top. I was very happy with how this picture turned out. He goes perfectly with my Boba Fett piece. I'm really happy with how those two kind of blend together. But yeah, The Clone Wars, it's one of those titles that people in my generation, Gen Z, which I'm not proud to be Gen Z at all, but there's nothing I can do about it. We all really enjoyed the Clone Wars. This was sort of our introduction into Star Wars in many effects. So that series was really important to me, and that got me interested in the universe. And I think Dave Filoni, I don't blame people for giving him crap for what he's done in live action. He hasn't done a good job at all. And I have a feeling he won't get any better either. But when it came to animation back in the day, he was an expert storyteller. Very happy with recognizing that with these Clone Wars pieces. And then when we look to the right, I also have some Seinfeld pieces. I loved Seinfeld. That's pretty much up there with The Office for me. And I had to bring these to life. These were more fun little illustrations I did of Jerry Seinfeld, George Costanza, and Kramer. And I'm really happy with how Kramer turned out especially. And then to the right, you know what? This was a similar issue with the Book of Boba Fett. When you think about that series, you know, gosh, they neutered Boba hard in that. They did it again with Kenobi. And, you know, I wonder now why I exactly made this image, because Kenobi, you know, that series, it's just ridden with flaws. And I'm not happy with what they did with the character, but I was pleased to see that he was able to conquer his demons and his challenges and rise above and be kind of become a stronger Jedi than he's ever been by the end of it. And that's where we are here, and it's just kind of an inspiring piece for me. Now when we scroll on over here, we get to some really exciting blow-up busts of my artwork. And these are giant pieces that really showcase in person and digitally the smaller effects, because so much goes into all of these pieces that you just can't get with, you know, an image, a little picture. You kind of had to see them in person. But these larger prints, you can get a good sense of the detail when you get really close to it. So I love seeing these. They're massive, and it just kind of brings out the light in the character and the charisma in a lot of these pieces, you know, just scrolling in on them. Because each one of these, especially for my Lawrence of Arabia piece, they're all very independent of each other. And I'm very proud with how these turned out in particular. I never imagined that I would be drawing these two young men on the sides here and giving them so much character, but I think they're some of my favorite humans I've actually drawn. So very happy with how this turned out. And, you know, I think Lawrence's face just perfectly captures the smirkiness that he has. So yeah, very happy with how Lawrence turned out. And then of course we have a larger Schindler's List here as well. I mean, you see just how big these are. This is me with Oskar Schindler. And, you know, this was, again, a super emotional piece to make. And I watched, when I make my art, I like to, you know, listen to the film itself or the series, whatever it is. I think I listened to Schindler's List 6 times while making this piece. And it just hit me in the feels every time, like I'd seen it for the very first. And, you know, of course, this piece captures that final scene where he's with all the Jews that he saved during the Holocaust, and they gift him this ring. And he's looking at it, and he just sees his life kind of fly right before him. And it's a very emotional scene, and throughout the whole film, he's very composed, and he kind of breaks down in this scene, and it's a really moving one. Then over here, we'll just kind of go through these quickly. This is unfortunately a brighter version of my Apocalypse Now piece, but this is only like a 15th of the size of the real thing, but I loved how this one turned out. The Sidney Prescott one, this is a giant Sidney Prescott print I have here. This is one I'm particularly proud of for just the beautiful colors. I love the saturation of it. And you know what? I mean, she has no idea what she's realizing. You got Scream, Ghostface right behind her. And I'm really happy with how the hand turned out, too. If we look at the hand and the phone, I was really pleased with that. I think I'm decent at making hands, but when it comes to drawing anybody, the hands, of course, are one of the most challenging aspects of that. And the face. I mean, you have to get the face right. And I think this looks like Neve Campbell, don't you guys? So let me know in the comments below. And out of my big prints, I'm probably most fond of this one because, like I said earlier, the Book of Boba Fett piece, this is the most packed detail I have. And when you get really close to it, you could just see how much goes into this. And, when I was making this piece, like I said, this one took me, actually, I don't think I said how long this took. This one took me about 65 hours. This was the longest one ever take to make. And what I would have to do is I'd have to come up with landmarks. That's what I call them, landmark positions, where there is a completely identifiable space where you can exhibit and kind of look around the area for other like-minded objects. Like this was a great landmark right here, where I knew the other wrinkles had to come together to meet a certain point by this. If you didn't do that here, then you would go nuts and you'd lose yourself in the whole thing. And one small little flaw with, organic wrinkles like this could throw the whole image off and make it not convincing, because I'm going for realism here, especially in this piece. Then when we move over here, I don't think I showed him. Oh, I think I did. But yeah, Joker, this has been one of my best sellers, my Joaquin Phoenix Joker piece. My mom, for the longest time, hated this drawing. She never thought I'd make any money selling this. And this is one of my top sellers. And it's one of my oldest pieces, too. The show here, it's a collection of work ever since I was 15 years old. So that's about the time that I started getting into more of the hyper-realism like I have here in the show. And this one wasn't even my best piece, but a lot of people really like it, so I'm happy with that. I want to talk about this one real quickly because, as I like to mention in my videos, my faith's important to me. I'm a devout Catholic and Christian, and I wanted to make a piece that kind of resembled that told a message, and this was that for me. I wasn't interested initially in making this character kind of an image of myself. But it ended up becoming that because a lot of artists, they find a way to stuff themselves into the characters they draw. And you might have noticed that about a lot of these drawings, that they look kind of like me. You can't really help it. It's just the way things are. And that's sort of what happened here with this character. This was supposed to just be a random man that's dealing and ridden with sin and deceit. Because as we all are, it's something we all have to deal with. And this guy is just a more visual example of that. And I wanted to show the pain by displaying this gust cloud that protrudes out of his head, that just encapsulates all the sins that weigh him down. You have pride, you have lust, you have hate, greed, dread, laziness, lying, idolatry, blasphemy, ego, deception. And these are sins we all have to deal with every day. Unfortunately, we're not perfect, but thankfully for Jesus, he forgives us our sins and he gives us another chance. And you look at this character and you think, what's the hope for somebody like that? And that's why we're reminded to look at this verse, Daniel 9:9, where it says, "The Lord our God is merciful and forgiving, even though we have rebelled against him." So that's sort of an encouraging message to uplift this character that's driven by pain and just weighed down by the stakes of life. And of course, above him is a depiction of Jesus, and he has his hand on his shoulder, and he is comforting him in his pain. So I was happy I was able to bring that to life. I got to make more religious-based pieces. And then, of course, we have two more big blow-ups of my Fallout pieces. Like I said, I just love this series. And something I really enjoy about looking at these in a larger format is being able to respect all the work and the detail that went into the background, because I never imagined making a Lucy McLean drawing would be more difficult just crafting the background, because I wanted to give us an accurate, immersive experience inside the vault. And that's what I think this one displays. And I'm particularly happy with how her outfit turned out too. I love her outfit. It's very vivid. It pops. It contrasts perfectly with the vault. And it shows, just how beautiful their outfits are. The costumes in that series are insane. And then you look at the ghoul too. I think Fallout the games, the show, whatever it is. They just have such beautiful imagery, and it's such an interesting, fantastical series of stories all coming together. So 2 great characters there. If we go this way, we're not done yet, so stay tuned. I'm going to show you Kathleen Kennedy next. So right now we're going to check out 2 of my ironic pieces. I just thought I'd have fun with these. You know what I mean? What's special about art is that you're able to tell a story with it. And even though a lot of my stuff is just portraits, I like it to reflect the love I have for a character, or for a story, or for a message. You know what I mean? And, you know, a lot of the time, it's really just drawing a portrait of a character I like. When it came to this, it's sort of the opposite sorts of joy. I wanted to show just how burdened and pained I was by a certain character or person. So that's why don't we look at this one first? This is the monstrosity of Disney. I had the pleasure of meeting a critical drinker and nerdrotic and Star Wars Theory, all 3 of them at different points in time. And they all loved this piece and how this turned out, because all of us were equally disappointed and just disgusted by The Acolyte. And I watched the series from start to finish. Utter disaster, destroys everything, and it totally killed my love for Star Wars. I'm going to be honest with you. Don't watch it no matter what. So I had to put, pen to paper, and I understood what was happening. In this series, you have these 2 sisters. They're belittling and badgering twins that really go to show just how low Star Wars can go at trying to give us a convincing protagonist that's actually supposed to be evil while understanding her as a good character. That's what they're trying to do here. They tried to paint these evil characters as heroes. It's terrible. And for younger audiences, if they're not really thinking straight, they're going to buy into this crap. And I understand, this is supposed to be a series about Sith, but the way that Leslie Headland painted this story was that even though they had evil tendencies, they should embrace them. Both of them end up doing that by the end of the series. And, at some point, the director, the story makers, they all decided that they wanted the audience to feel for the villains and to follow their path, because that's what this show was really doing. And in the end, the actress was terrible. Amanda Stenberg. She did a terrible job, miserable inside and out of this series. And I just had to bring her to life in this fashion. So that's what I did here. And as you can see, both of the conjoined heads are miserable with each other. They don't want to be in Disney Star Wars anymore. Neither do we. If we look over to the right, this is the big reveal, Kathleen Kennedy as the Emperor. I was very happy with how she turned out. I had a lot of fun making this one. As is the case with a lot of my work, I can't just spend 5 minutes on it. Once I start something, I want to make it as good as I can make it. So that's what I did here with her, showing, the Empress of Star Wars, the woman that destroyed it all, just like the Emperor himself. So I think it's very fitting that she's represented in this fashion. And I can guarantee 99% of the people that have walked through the gallery have no idea what's going on with either of these pieces. And then if we look below, we also have some larger images of IG-11 from Mandalorian and Frog Lady. So those are some bigger ones. And then a larger print of Echo from the Bad Batch and the Clone Wars. Like I said, one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Over here, you haven't seen this yet. It's my Better Call Saul piece. I made this. I think I drew this 4 years ago. It was quite a while ago. And I was real happy with how he turned out. It's different than what I'm used to doing. I'm not a big fan of what I did with the face. I think there was too much line work, and I got a little too invested, a little zealous. But you know what? Nevertheless, I think he's a recognizable character. I was still happy with how he turned out, and I actually sold my original piece to a criminal defense attorney. So he gets a lot of comments on that in the office, and unfortunately, I don't have the original anymore. So this is all I got. So got to enjoy it while it lasts. And right here, this is a larger image of my Nobody piece. Like I said, this is not an inspiring scene, but just a particularly perplexing scene, without a doubt. And I think this is one of my earlier pieces I've done as well of Bob Odenkirk, or just in general, that I've really favored a lot. And I am really surprised that at my younger age, I was able to kind of bring this to life. I still haven't really had the luck of replicating this sort of quality in any of my work ever since. So I'm always trying to get back to that. And you know what? Sometimes, you have a hit and you have a miss. And this was one of my biggest hits. And I was at a pretty young age when I did that too. Then when we look over here, we have two more larger prints of my Breaking Bad pieces. Of course, I remember when I watched Breaking Bad for the first time, I was just, I'm an emotional person, and when I see evil characters do evil things, I don't like them. I don't want them in my life. I don't want to draw them. Why would I want to do that? But this was one of those characters that I couldn't help but just, losing myself in my head to, because he's such a complicated, perplexing character. And I had to draw him, and I ended up doing it, and I'm very happy with how it turned out, especially the RV in the background. This is like one of those features of this piece that kind of gets lost in the noise, because this is such a strong figure right here in the forefront, and I love the RV. I was very happy with how that turned out. And then to the right here is also a larger image of my Jesse Pinkman from El Camino. This is another one of those times where I haven't really been able to replicate the quality in either of these pieces, and I made them so many years ago, so I don't exactly know how that happened, but I still love this piece and my other stuff as well. Then when we look over here, we're going to have some fun. This is a much happier time. We're looking at Seinfeld, one of my favorite series, of course. And, the giant Kramer. The whole reason why I made this whole lot was because of my Kramer. Very happy with how Kramer turned out. And he was a lot of fun. Most expressive of the whole gang. And yeah, it's really fun seeing these blown up like this. You see just how big these are. And I have Jerry here and Elaine. And I have George up there on top. So king of the world, I guess. Then up here on top, we have larger format images of Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso. I never liked Daniel. I haven't from the start. I wasn't really a big fan of him in the Karate Kid movies either, to be honest. And especially in Cobra Kai, he's just particularly insufferable. I immediately fell in love with Johnny Lawrence's character. I think everybody's supposed to, you know what I mean? He's the most likable character in the entire series. Even though he was the bully from Karate Kid, he is just legendary in this show. And, I was pretty disappointed by the ending of this series, because after, the season before the last one, I just started to feel like it was getting way too silly. It's ridiculous what was happening. This is totally improbable. People are literally dying in the show. So it's like, I can't watch anymore. A lot of people were happy with how the series concluded, but I just decided to skip the last season altogether. And then over here on my left is Quill from Mandalorian. This is one of those pieces that nobody seems to understand or appreciate enough, because I think it actually looks just like him. And my family has all really loved this piece, and I think it's one of my better ones as well. I love how it turned out, and this is like such a humble character. This is another one of those really just great classic Mandalorian characters that isn't really talked about enough, especially when he dies. That's just a tragic scene, and I had to draw him and bring him to life, and I was real happy with how he turned out. And this is sort of one that usually gets glanced past at my shows when I have different shows and when I'm selling artwork. Nobody seemed interested in Quill, so I don't know what's wrong with Quill. But if I saw something Quill related anywhere, I'd happily buy it. I invested in an awesome Quill hot toy on the Blurg, the dinosaur thing he rides, and it's like this big. And great investment. So happy to support my man Quill. Now we just have one more piece, and then we're going to call it the end for today. Then finally, to wrap things up, I have my giant Ahsoka piece I made here. And this is one of those images that I made that kind of tells a story about an artist more than anything else. Because when I started drawing this, the illustration looked great. Coloring hasn't always been my thing. I've never really enjoyed coloring that much until my later years, and now I'm trying to get into it more. When I started this, I was used to using a lot of grays, a lot of warm grays, beiges, kind of keeping everything cooler. I wasn't interested in vibrancy. I wasn't interested in popping color. And when I made her, I made the mistake of coloring her with a marker, one of those alcoholic markers, that was especially vibrant, orange, deep blood red orange. And I was so disappointed, but then I decided, I thought about it, why don't I just run with this mistake and see where it takes me? And now that I did, I'm so happy that I did, because this image taught me a real lesson to go outside of my comfort zone, to embrace my mistakes, and to just have a more vibrant perspective on life, because it just makes a much more beautiful picture that we all enjoy. And you know what? When I look at her, it literally looks like you're looking at a fruit. This is like a juicy strawberry, a juicy mango, orange, apple, whatever you want. It's a blend of all those things. And I think that's something that I take home as a real life learned lesson, to embrace your mistakes and to pursue different concepts and different ideas that are kind of outside of your comfort zone, because I didn't want to make her that way, but that's the way she turned out, and I'm so happy that it did. So at the end of the day, I appreciate you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. It is a little different than normal, but if you liked what I had to say, if you liked my show, please let me know in the comments below what one of your favorite pieces was, and tell me about your art and your creative experience, and make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Bye.